straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily.
Johnny is doing great. We FaceTimed him right after the verdict, and it looked like the weight of the world is off of his shoulders.
Fresh off a winning verdict, Law&Crime Network sits down with Johnny Depp's famed attorney and the Murdaugh murder mystery, why officials will soon exhume the body of Alec Murdaugh's former housekeeper. Plus, survivors of Larry Nassar's sexual abuse say the FBI botched its investigation, how much they're seeking in damages. And later,
Uvalde, Texas is where I was born. I swear my mom taught kindergarten less than a mile from Robb Elementary.
actor Matthew McConaughey addresses the deadly school shooting in a White House briefing. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Fresh off the heels of an overwhelming victory in the high-profile defamation suit viewed around the world, Johnny Depp's attorney Ben Chew speaks to the Law&Crime Network for the first time. After weeks of testimony, the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard trial ended in a win for both actors, with the jury finding mostly in favor of Depp. The jury awarded Depp $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages over Heard claiming to be a victim of domestic abuse in a 2018 Washington Post op-ed article. Heard also won part of the countersuit when she was awarded $2 million in compensatory damages and nothing for punitive damages over comments made by Depp's attorney, Adam Waldman. Just 1 week after the verdict was announced, Law&Crime Network's Jesse Weber sat down with Depp's attorney, Ben Chew. Chew explained how the team prepared Depp for his lengthy testimony and why he was emotional as the verdict was read.
We were nervous in the sense that he writes all of his, he writes his scripts when he is performing roles. And this is no different. We had suggestions, as any attorneys would, but ultimately what he says is all in his own words. So we knew, or we strongly believed, that he was going to be consistent with everything and truthful. And so in that sense, we weren't that worried about him, and he didn't have to be reminded about dates and events. His memory is quite clear about what happened and what did not happen. I thought he was terrific.
And what about under cross-examination by Benjamin Rottenborn? It got tense at times. What were your thoughts on how the cross?
Well, our main concern, as with any witness, is that he not lose his cool, because we knew that they would come at him with a male, and in this case, Ben Rottenborn. So when we practiced, we had one of our senior attorneys, Wayne Dennison, come in and play the role of attack dog. And so I think Johnny was prepared for that, and I think he kept his composure under cross. I think he did a very good job. We didn't want to be presumptuous enough to think that we were winning, because it's very hard to read the jury, but we did think that Johnny's direct testimony and his performance on cross was excellent. And we also were happy with Camille Vasquez's masterful cross-examination of Amber Heard. And we think the contrast there was one of them was willing to take accountability, and one of them appeared less willing to be accountable for certain things and appeared to have convenient answers for everything.
You hear the verdict, a win on each one of Johnny Depp's claims. What was your reaction?
It was emotional. We were so thrilled for him. That was great.
Joining us today is LA County Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé and co-host Terry Austin. Philip, you've tried cases, and with so much press around this trial before, during, and now after, how in-depth of a look into this trial is this?
Oh, it was very, first of all, it was a very lengthy trial, and they're very rarely televised, and you rarely actually see celebrities on trial in a full-blown trial. Usually counsel will appear on their behalf at various hearings, but when it comes down to it and they're a party to the litigation and both sides can't settle, then both sides are there. But we rarely see this much camera activity in the courtroom, this much couture, very, very well-behaved counsel. And frankly, even the judge looked like she had, some cameos and pearls on and a little war paint, frankly, to be camera ready. But oftentimes in the real world, the parties can be quite redundant. They keep repeating themselves. But the judge had a pretty tight rein on these lawyers and kept it moving at least. So I think it was a pretty fair exemplar, but for some of the celebrity aspects of the trial.
Makes sense. I would agree as well. Terry, any surprises or new insight on the trial after hearing Chu sit down with Jesse?
I expected that Depp was going to be well prepared. After all, his firm, Brown Rudnick, the lawyers who represented Depp, is an excellent firm. But I didn't know, and we learned that Johnny Depp did prepare his own answers. So for a fact, I'm sure the lawyers scripted the questions, but we learned that Johnny Depp actually scripted the narrative. And that makes a lot of sense. If he's telling the truth, if it's his story, if he scripts that narrative and he sticks to it, it's going to be genuine. He's going to come across well, and the jury is going to believe him. So I think the prep was excellent. They told him what to anticipate, and he told his story to that jury.
Yeah, usually you have to work your client into telling their story, pull it out of them. But when you have a client giving a story like that, it rings that much true, and it's a lot less work. I can see Philip smiling in agreement. It's a lot less work for the defense. Switching now from movie actors to reality TV stars, as the Chrisley Knows Best headliners are found guilty of fraud and tax evasion. Todd and Julie Chrisley, the married couple best known for their reality TV show Chrisley Knows Best, were found guilty by a federal jury in Atlanta on Tuesday. Jurors found the couple guilty of conspiring to defraud community banks of more than $30 million in fraudulent loans. A release from the Department of Justice says the couple used the money to buy designer clothes, luxury cars, and real estate property. The DOJ also says the Chrisleys did not file tax returns or pay any taxes between 2013 and 2016. Prosecutors say the couple faked credit reports and bank statements and used a film production company to hide their income from the IRS. Right now, the couple is free on bond, but are required to wear GPS monitoring systems. The pair is expected to be sentenced in October. And a 12-year-old boy is in police custody after allegedly robbing a gas station at gunpoint last week. Surveillance video shows the boy walking up to the checkout counter with a backpack in one hand and concealing a gun in the other. After waiting for the man in front of him to check out, he brandishes the gun and quietly tells the cashier to put the money in the bag. The cashier can be heard asking, "Are you serious?" Take a look at what happens next. Police say the boy stole the gun from his grandfather from a locked cabinet in his home. They say he was caught shortly after the robbery nearby. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, Larry Nassar survivors say the FBI botched the sexual abuse investigation. But first, 1 year after the double homicide rocked South Carolina, the murders of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh are still unsolved. Welcome back. This week marks 1 year since the murder of the wife and son of South Carolina disgraced attorney Alec Murdaugh. That anniversary comes just days after the family of his former housekeeper agreed to have her body exhumed for re-examination. The body of Murdaugh's former housekeeper, Gloria Stattersfield, will be exhumed as part of a new investigation into her mysterious death. Stattersfield died in February 2018 at the Murdaugh's South Carolina home. It was initially ruled a falling accident. This renewed interest in her manner of death comes amid Murdaugh facing a slew of fraud charges, including allegedly stealing a more than $4 million settlement made with Statterfield's sons after her death and faking his own murder in order to collect a $10 million insurance payout for his son. The botched murder plot came just a day after Murdaugh was accused of stealing millions of dollars from former clients. Murdaugh has not been charged in relation to Stattersfield's death. 1 year after the murder of his wife and son, no arrests have been made in that case either. Terry, it's been a year since Paul and Maggie Murdaugh deaths, and we don't seem to be any closer to solving their murders. Why do you think that is?
You know, I kind of understand, Brian, why it's taking so long. This case involves so many moving parts. You have the death of Gloria Satterfield, the housekeeper. You have, don't forget, the death of Mallory Beach, who was in that boat crash involving Murdaugh's son, Paul. You have the civil suits that are being brought by Satterfield and Beach families. You have insurance fraud. You have embezzlement as far as the client funds are concerned. You have the deadly shooting, obviously, of Maggie and the son. And don't forget, he staged his own suicide, and there's a third party involved. So the authorities are looking at all of this, trying to put it together, trying to see if there are any pieces that they can tie into each other. So it's going to take a while.
Absolutely. Now, Philip, Gloria Satterfield's body will be exhumed, but she's been buried for so long. So what do you expect we will learn, and what will still maybe a mystery after her body is exhumed?
Well, once the body is exhumed, it will be in the care of that particular county coroner's office. And I anticipate that they will either hold what's called a coroner's inquest, where they will present bits and pieces of evidence to an actual jury to decide whether or not, what the cause of death is and whether or not it's a homicide. For now, what it's showing is that it was natural causes from a fall. But I anticipate that the coroner, that the jury, as part of this inquest, or even a forensic anthropologist, is going to look at the skeletal remains to look to see if there was blunt force trauma anywhere on the head or anywhere maybe in the spinal column, and also do toxicology studies on the skeletal remains to see if there was any poison or other foul play.
All right, we'll see what those results bring up, and thank you for that list. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a famous actor makes a plea for stricter gun control laws in the United States. Plus, survivors of Larry Nassar's sexual abuse say the FBI botched its investigation. How much money they're now seeking from law enforcement. Welcome back. Survivors of Larry Nassar's abuse are now seeking $1 billion from the FBI, saying officials delayed the investigation into Nassar after receiving multiple reports. Dozens of girls and women maintain Nassar sexually assaulted them as children while working as their gymnastics doctor. Olympic gymnasts Simone Biles and Michaela Moroni are among the nearly 100 women and girls now filing tort claims against the FBI, saying its investigation was botched. Back in 2021, 4 Olympic gymnasts testified before the U.S. Senate, saying FBI agents mishandled the investigation by making false statements and ignoring reports of abuse for years. Nassar, who worked for decades as a team doctor for Michigan State University and USA Gymnastics, was convicted on multiple counts, including sexual assault of a child and possession of child pornography. He's now serving a 60-year sentence on child pornography charges. He also faces a separate sentence of 40 to 175 years in state prison for 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct. Terry, what type of evidence should we expect to support, or see to support, the claims by the former gymnast against the FBI?
There is a slew of evidence, Brian. They're alleging that the FBI actually mishandled the Nassar investigation, and they're suing under the Federal Tort Claims Act, which makes any employee of the United States liable if they are negligent. Well, here, all they have to do is look at the report from the Inspector General, which said that there was negligence, that the FBI failed to properly investigate. And so if they are able to bring that into the case, that's going to be all of the evidence that they need, because it's going to actually show that the FBI was contacted and they did nothing to investigate the case.
Yeah. Philip, with all we know about Larry Nassar and the FBI's involvement, or lack thereof, should we expect a settlement here, or maybe changes in how the FBI works, or a full-blown trial?
If a motion for summary judgment in favor of the FBI is denied, it will settle. But I anticipate this is going to be more of a legal test. FBI agents under the Federal Tort Claims Act enjoy what's called the discretionary duty doctrine, meaning that if they perform an act that requires discretion on their part, in other words, it's not a mandatory duty to act, and you cannot be faulted for failing to act. You cannot be faulted at all. So I anticipate that if this was a discretionary act, in other words, in choosing not to further investigate, and there is no law or policy or regulation on point that directs the FBI to investigate these claims, I think their lawsuits will be dismissed.
Agreed as well. Well, we'll see how it plays out. When we come back, an emotional plea for stricter gun control laws. Uvalde, Texas native and famed actor Matthew McConaughey calls for policy change following the deadly school shooting. Welcome back. Academy Award-winning actor Matthew McConaughey makes an impassioned speech at the White House following the deadly school shooting in his hometown of Uvalde, Texas. 19 students and 2 teachers were shot and killed on May 24th when an 18-year-old gunman opened fire in the school. 17 others were injured. The gunman used an AR-15 style rifle to shoot and injure his grandmother before making his way to the school. He entered through an unlocked side door and remained inside for more than an hour as multiple students inside the building called 911. He was later shot and killed by Border Patrol agents. McConaughey, who was born in Uvalde, Texas, says he visited the city just one day after the shooting. He says his mother taught kindergarten just 1 mile from Robb Elementary School. At a White House address on Tuesday, McConaughey called for stricter gun control requirements. The actor got emotional when explaining how one student's body was identified.
You could feel the shock in the town. You could feel the pain, the denial, the disillusion, anger, blame, sadness, loss of lives, dreams halted. We saw ministries, we saw first responders, counselors, cooks, families trying to grieve without it being on the front page news. We met with the local funeral director and countless morticians who hadn't slept since the massacre the day before, because they've been working 24/7 trying to handle so many bodies at once, so many little innocent bodies who had their entire lives still yet to live. Maite wore green high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe because they represented her love of nature. Camilla's got these shoes. Can you show these shoes, please? Wore these every day. Green Converse with a heart on the right toe. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting. We need to invest in mental health care. We need safer schools. We need to restrain sensationalized media coverage. We need to restore our family values. We need to restore our American values. And we need responsible gun ownership. Responsible gun ownership. We need background checks. We need to raise the minimum age to purchase an AR-15 rifle to 21. We need a waiting period for those rifles. We need red flag laws and consequences for those who abuse them. These are reasonable, practical, tactical regulations.
Meanwhile, the Department of Justice announced it's launching a critical review of the law enforcement response following the deadly shooting. In a release, the DOJ says the review would work to provide an account of the law enforcement response, identify lessons learned from that response, and work to outline the best practices for future first responders involved in similar incidents. Since the shooting, law enforcement has faced backlash for its response time, many noting it took officers 1 hour and 17 minutes to break into the school after the gunman first walked inside. The DOJ now says its Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services will conduct the review. Philip, where do you think the DOJ will start their investigation into the Uvalde police response to this mass shooting?
Well, the good news is it's a critical review and not a criminal probe. The first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at the time of the call for help, the time of arrival, how many deaths occurred before they forced entry into that final room where the gunman was killed. Ultimately, I think the DOJ is going to put this local police department on a path toward avoiding a receivership so they know what best practices to use if, God forbid, in the future they ever have another mass murder anywhere, be it a market, a school, anywhere in public.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to think that we're preparing for the next one. But Terry, what was your takeaway from McConaughey's speech, and what action do you think is needed next?
You know, I think McConaughey was very passionate. He is from Uvalde. I'm so glad he came. I'm so glad he spoke up. And I think people are listening to what he had to say, but I don't think it's enough. He talked about mental health care, safer schools, restraining the media, family values. All of those things are excellent. But at the end of the day, he basically said, you know, if you have an AR-15, raise the age and make sure that you are not a red flag risk. But in my humble opinion, I don't think that anyone really needs an AR-15. You don't need to have an AR-15 if you're going hunting or even if you're protecting your home. So I do think we need to start with what he said, but I think we should probably go further.
Now let's hope they'll make some steps going forward in this crisis. Well, thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.